Okay.
Okay, so the recording started. As you all know, I'm Anna,
Hi, I'm Athena.
and we just finished our last radio show for Modern Greek Radio. We're also joined by Zoe here, but she's not really relevant to the class. She's just cute.
She's adorable.
So I guess to start off, I graduated just last week. Last week?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with a major in philosophy, a minor in modern Greek. So this class was part of my minor, and been quite a journey completing these radio shows, right? It's been quite, we first started talking about doing radio together back like freshman year, right?
Yeah, freshman year.
Back in 1103, that first semester of college for both of us.
Yeah, no, I remember I met you, Anna, through Greek 1103, and we became partners like through skits in class, and then we were like, we should do Greek radio if it works in our schedules. So we went ahead and did it.
We always had some great skits back in 1103. And
Yeah.
then, we were going to do it last year. And then, this little thing called COVID happened. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. And finally, we got to do it this semester. And we did our first radio show as like a little mock debate about our two islands, because I'm from Chios, the best island, and Athena's from Zakynthos. So,
Arguably the best.
Arguably the best island. But that show went pretty well, I think, in the end. Definitely a lot of stress leading up to it with us.
Yeah. I think because we didn't know really what to expect as far as like recording and everything. And we didn't, our first radio broadcast, I don't think we had any interviews. So that was something.
It was all us.
Right, I think, which added to the pressure.
Yeah, because trying to get that timing down, I think we ended up with like a 20-page long script and all this music. And, we were really nervous. Like we were like really down to the wire trying to add time on. Okay, Zoe's leaving. Trying to like add time on, even like the night before. I think we were like, what can we add? What can we add? But it ended up working out. It was about 15 minutes long, I think. And my mom says that it was good, so obviously it must be good, right?
Yeah. No, and I liked how we incorporated a lot of songs that we chose to.
Yeah, I think that was a really fun one. And I think we really like showed our like personality. And obviously like all of our jokes were like pre-scripted. But I think it's like definitely like reminiscent of like the way we just talk as friends, like always like teasing, always like whatever. So I think like that one was really like a fun show. We definitely, I think, spent the most time on it. The other two ended up being a little bit rushed just because of some like unforeseen circumstances. But for the Heels versus Zakynthos show, even though like we were like kind of fixing it up down to the last minute, I think it turned out really good. From what I've heard, my Yayas listened to it like 3 times. She's like obsessed with it.
Aww.
She also doesn't have internet. She also like doesn't know how to use a phone. So like that's the only thing she knows how to listen to. But we'll take the victory.
That's sweet. Yeah. And I liked how we also did a lot of research on our own islands.
Yeah, it was nice. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just for the first one, we did research on like fun facts on each island, and we kind of worked through the outline. And I think after the first broadcast, we like learned how to work with each other as far as like doing a second script and the third one. So that helped out.
And I think the nice thing with like that topic we chose is like we both had an opportunity to like learn more about where we're from. And even though we didn't do any like formal interviews, I know we both talked to like our this and our family members about like their memories from the island. So it like not only was it like we like learned more about like the Greek language and like grammar and like speaking, like it was good practice, but we also got to learn more about our families. And I think that was like really nice.
Yeah, no, for sure. We did a good job. We did a great job.
Now the next 2 shows. So our second show, which to those of you who listen to the broadcast, you'll notice at the end of our first show, we said the next show is gonna be out of college, and then the next show wasn't. So what happened there was the week of spring break, I ended up having some health issues and I was in the hospital. So we were unable to record it. And I remember because I texted Athena when I was in the hospital, I was like, hey, we had all these interviews scheduled. And I texted her, I was like, hey, like, you're gonna have to cancel them all because I'm in the hospital. I can't do the interviews. And she actually ended up doing all the interviews on her own. But then once I got out, there was like a lot of stuff. It was a hectic time, basically.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
ended up switching topics, switching the order of our topics. So we kept those interviews that she had done over spring break and we kind of shelved them. And then we decided to do a show about like spring traditions because, you know, we have Easter and we have March 25th in the spring because I had to stay at home with my family. So like I had like, that resource to interview them. And I think like it was very like spontaneous. Like we just decided to switch things up. So it definitely was a bit of a hassle, like switching gears so quickly, but I think it turned out really well in the end. I don't know like if you have any thoughts on it, Athena.
Yeah, I really liked the second one. I thought that was a really cool topic that hasn't been done before. And then we learned more about like the traditions and the religious aspect. Um, it was nice to have the support of our parents. I know I practiced a lot with my mom with the pronunciation. Um, yeah, it was really fun to interview your parents live. I think that was really cool for the second broadcast. Yeah.
I think like our biggest challenge with those last two broadcasts is because I had to move back to Cleveland. We couldn't meet up in person anymore and practice. We were practicing on the phone. But I think even though like it was challenging to have to like try and like get everything down to the script over the phone, because obviously, I mean, we've all done like online classes since COVID started. But for a project like this, it was difficult not being in person with each other. But I think we really made it work. And then of course, my parents came down for the live interview, and I think that was a lot of fun. My dad, of course, quite the comedian, a lot of snide comments made in English, but I think, you know, it turned out being really funny and entertaining. Just gotta hope that some of my relatives don't listen because they might get a little offended. That's fine.
That's so funny. No, it
Yeah.
was yeah, it was great overall. What really helped is we did like weekly meetings on the phone, Anna and I, so that really helped. And yeah, I mean, we still did our work. Yeah, we were still organized, so everything
And
went
we met on
well.
the phone, and I know like my mom was a big resource for that one because she's like Sunday school supervisor at my church, so she's very involved with like all of the March 25th programs and stuff there. So she was a big resource for kind of informing us, not to mention, you know, we got very theological in that one, which we previously hadn't really thought about going into like Greek Orthodoxy, because obviously, you know, Greek culture isn't necessarily mean Greek Orthodoxy, but it definitely is a part. So I think it was nice. My mom, as like a Sunday school teacher, she's been for like 25 years, was able to give us a lot of the details. And like I think we learned a lot of stuff about like the like theological background of those holidays we didn't know before.
Yeah, and the vocabulary. I mean, I learned a lot vocabulary just in that beginning of script two alone in Greek. So that was really helpful.
And I think like one of the things that like I really remember is I interviewed my Papa and Yaya on the phone, not on the phone. I was in person with them, but we pre-recorded it. And while we were doing the interview, like I was interviewing him, I think on May 1st, and my Yaya was like, by the way, like today is Greek Labor Day. And like I never knew that was a thing. So like I had no scripted questions for that topic, but she started telling me about it. And I was like, wow, like, you know, we were focusing on March 25th and Easter, but we learned that there was another big spring celebration in Greece. So I think like it really proves that, like, especially through the interviews, like you learn things and like, you know, like you can like try and script for the interviews. I think it really like prepare so that you have like the written down grammar perfectly. But I think what was interesting, I don't know if this came up in the interviews you did, Athena, but in the ones I did, is that like as we talked, I would like learn new things that like I didn't expect that they would say and kind of have to think on the fly and respond in Greek. So I know like in some of those interviews, my grammar definitely was not perfect, but I think it was definitely a learning moment, kind of like thinking on the fly, coming up with new questions when like, you know, you practice reading the questions you have written down. And I think it still ended up turning out pretty well, considering that, you know, a lot of the questions were came up with spur of the moment. And those who know me know that I suck at grammar, both in English and in Greek. So even though my grammar wasn't perfect, it was definitely a learning experience. And I think it added some more conversationalness to the interviews and like made them a little bit more interesting and more fun rather than just sounding like a scripted conversation.
Yeah, for sure. When I interviewed Elizabeth and Chris, I felt the same way, to have like followed up questions that weren't scripted. It was kind of nice though, because no matter how many times you prepare to go to Greece, you know, you're never gonna have a scripted conversation when you go on vacation. So it was nice to like push yourself even if the grammar was off, because I'm sure I messed up too in my interviews. To push yourself to at least get the message across, and then the interviewee understands what you're asking, that type of thing. So
That is definitely true. And I think for me, I probably had it easier because I was interviewing my grandparents who are very used to my Gringlish bad grammar. So for them, like as long as I like say the correct words for the most part, they get what I mean. But I think like you make a good point about like going to Greece is like, you know, I remember like when I was younger in Greece, I would like if I had to go up and order something myself or like talk to somebody, I would always like try to practice exactly what I was going to say in my head. And the conversation would never go exactly the way you thought. Like you could never just go up and place your order in Greek and have them respond, okay, here it is. Like there's always some follow-up question or some conversation or some unprecedented thing. So I think like as much as we do script these radio shows and script these interviews, I think like we also part of it is learning to think on the fly in the interviews, and it kind of practices that skill of, hey, not every conversation you have is going to be you having your lines written out for you. And I think that really was one of like the valuable lessons, especially for me in the second radio show. I noticed, and for you in the third, because that's where you had more interviews.
Yeah, and even I remember when we interviewed your parents live, I remember you added some follow-up questions just based on what your parents were sharing with us. So that was good.
Yeah, I think having my parents live, especially, it was definitely a little nerve-wracking because, when you're interviewing your parents or you're interviewing a family member and it's pre-recorded, if you really mess up, you can stop it or you can cut the clip or you can rubber. But with my parents, first of all, as I said, my dad is like a huge goofball. So he was making comments left and right. And of course, like just trying to keep up with them because, they both are pretty good at speaking Greek. Like my dad was born in Greece. So it's like keeping up with what they're saying and thinking of responses, especially when like they're both very witty and like making jokes. I think that was like a good practice in like conversational Greek.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. It's funny because my parents, they're like the opposite. They did not want to be interviewed at all. They're like, I can help you with research, but I will not actually be interviewed.
My God, my dad loved being interviewed. I think it's like he's a lawyer, so he loves talking in front of people. That's like his thing. I think part of him was even like bummed he didn't get to be interviewed for the third radio show, which we did end up doing on college. We compared college in Greece versus college in America. So we had interviews with Chris Haritos, Athena's family friend Elizabeth, and my sister Pammy. And then we played some music. And that one went pretty well. We ended up doing that one virtually, which was again another basically every radio show was like a completely different experience. Like, the first one was like really just us two working on it. Like we got input from our families, but for the most part, like it was us two meeting in person 3 times a week. The second one, it was like, we weren't in the same place. We were like collaborating over the phone, but then we came together on the day of. And I think that was the first time we'd seen each other in person in like a good minute. And
Yeah.
we put the script together. And that was interesting because we hadn't gone to practice together as much. Like we both practiced individually a lot, obviously, but like that was really, I think, our first time reading through the full script together in the same room.
Yeah, the day that we recorded. Yeah.
And then, of course, having my parents in the studio, that was like a whole other added layer
Yeah.
of doing a live interview is quite the challenge.
Yeah, no. But despite us only practicing just by ourselves or with our moms, like I think overall it went really well. I was very impressed with how how smooth
Yeah.
it went.
No, I agree. And then for the third one, we were, I think I was back in St. Louis. I've been back in Cleveland. So neither of us was able to come to Columbus. So we couldn't record that one live there. So we ended up having to do it kind of ourselves. So like I kind of got a bit of a lesson in like audio technology. My dad's a bit of like a computer nerd. So he helped us out with the editing. But it was really interesting. Like it was a very different experience. And I think like writing the script, it was interesting because we had started this script back in like the end of April, early March. We'd started working on it. And then we basically put it on pause, did a completely different show on a different topic, and then we came back to it. So it was interesting piecing those things together where we'd started working on it and then we stopped. And then we kind of had to try and pick up where we left off. But we also kind of changed up what we were going to do. Because originally we were going to try and interview more college students down at Ohio State. And then obviously the circumstances made that impossible. But I think it was really interesting getting to interview Pammy instead because she went to a really small school and there wasn't like a Greek community there. So kind of seeing the difference between like going to a school with 2,000 students like Capital and going to a school like Ohio State where there's, I think, 40,000 undergrad students.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. I remember we were gonna do a bunch of interviews earlier in the semester for the third script, but I liked how we like chose 3 people and we like talked more with them and wasn't like more people, but like it was more superficial. So that was nice that we actually had like good conversations with all of our interviewees.
Yeah, exactly. We got to really like, instead of just asking some like base level questions of like, where did you go to college? Like each person, we had 3 people we interviewed, and each interview, I feel like we learned a lot about the person. Like, especially, I know the interviews you did, Athena, were really long. My sister, she was helping us out. She was doing the interview, but like, she's there, she didn't have Greek classes at her college. She just hasn't taken a Greek class since Greek school. So it was harder for her to speak more. But I think especially the 2 interviews Athena did, like you could see like they were basically just full conversations and we really got to know those people and their college experiences, which I think is really valuable to have like recorded because I think like, first of all, at least have it like her experiences of like going to college in Greece and then orthodontic school here it was, correct?
Right.
Yeah, and then Chris Haritos, he was, I mean, anyone who's done Sigma at Ohio State, they know Chris, right? So I think he gave the longest interview by far of anyone, right?
Yeah. And he was a good resource because he went to Thiespa with a bunch of Sigma students and modern Greek students in 2018. So and I think he graduated, I want to say in December. So he was pretty recent as far as like him being in the loop at OSU. So that was a good resource.
I think it was especially interesting because Thiespa was one of those programs that you and I had talked about doing, but unfortunately, because of COVID, we weren't able to. So I think getting to hear that interview and getting to hear somebody else's experience, it definitely provided like an insight to Sigma and to Greek culture at OSU that me and Athena personally couldn't. Because even though we both are in Sigma, we're both Greek, we're both involved in the modern Greek program, our experience has been predominantly affected by COVID. So interviewing a student who kind of had that experience of when things were more normal before everything happened, I think like even we learned more that we didn't know because despite each of us having gone here for 3 years, 2 of those years have basically been COVID years. So I think kind of getting that glimpse into like what things were like normally, I think was really interesting and it provided an insight into the program that we ourselves couldn't have. So I think it was a really valuable addition to our last broadcast.
Yeah, for sure. And it was, I don't know, Chris is just so fun to talk to. It was fun just catching up with him. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was good.
So I feel like that we just went pretty in depth on all of our programs, like what was good, what was bad. And then I think just like the more general things, like obviously, I think it was a lot of fun. I don't want to say having an excuse to hang out 3 times a week, but like let's be honest, like we would have to work on the script and we would work on the script. Obviously, there were a lot of work, but we would also just catch up and hang out. And I think we've even talked about like in our first radio show how like me and Athena have a tendency to get very off topic. So I think it was fun getting to like having like an excuse to hang out during classes.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it was fun to not be like in a classroom setting and kind of work more creativity or be more creative. And it was nice because we like Anna and I, we have different strengths and weaknesses. So we kind of like worked with each other and like when we needed to lean on each other, that's when we did.
Exactly. Like I think we're like very like not opposite people completely. We definitely have our similarities, but like when it comes to like academics, we have like differing strengths. So
Mhm.
we balanced really well, which was nice. And then who can forget like some of our jokes, like me dancing on the table for the first broadcast, or
Yeah.
you know, my dad and I don't even want to repeat the things my dad was saying because it was a
No,
lot.
I mean your
But
parents
if
were
you
great.
listen to the show, you remember what he said.
I know.
I think that kind of concludes everything. I mean, I feel like we really, unless you have anything else you want to add about.
I don't know. As far as advice goes, just obviously try to be consistent. Communication is important with your partner. You definitely have support through Professor Brown. Um, I don't know any advice or tips. Anna?
I guess some advice. I mean, like, if you do come from a Greek family, get your family involved. Like, I know at first I was like anxious to ask them because I was like, oh, I don't want to ask them to do all this work, but like they had fun with it. Um, I would also say like put your personality into your script because like any like like you could write basically what's an essay on a topic in Greek, and that'll like tick all the boxes to get you your grade. But I think what makes for the most like interesting radio show and most like engaging is when you can kind of put your personality in and like really like show through like your friendship, because I think most people who do this class typically take it with a friend to do it together like we did. So I think really just put your personality into the script and that'll make it much more enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, anything else, Anna?
No, though besides in submitting this assignment, this is officially my last assignment as an OC student. So I'm
Oh
glad
yeah.
I got to be here in the modern Greek department with you because very first semester we had that modern Greek class together. So it's very fitting. I think it's a fitting
I
end to
know.
my
Full
Ohio State.
circle.
So
Yeah. Crazy.
I think that's all for us.
Okay, well, sa tapu me pedía.
Signing off.
Bye.